there's no better time to discuss this very germane issue other than now. So without much ado, I'd like to recognize distinguished personalities here present. Yes, please permit me to recognize the distinguished presence of the president of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Yeah, in the person of Ashiwaju Dr. Michael Olawale Cole, CON. You're welcome, sir. Okay, the president will be ably represented by the DG of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the person of Dr. Chinyere Almona, FCA. Thank you very much, Ma, for being part of us today.
Thank you, Eze.
Yes, thank you very much, Ma. Also, I'd like to recognize the presence of the chairman of the LCCI SME group, and the person of Mr. Benjamin Adekagun, FCA, is the chairman of the SME group. Mr. Benjamin, can you say something?
Good morning, everybody, and you are welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir, for being part of us. I'd like to also recognize the distinguished presence of the deputy chairperson of the LCCI SME group, and the person of Mrs. Bamkoli Angela, FCA. Ms. Bamkoli, are you here?
Yes, good morning, all. You are welcome to this webinar. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ma. Thank you very much, Ma, for being part of us today. I'd like to quickly recognize distinguished guest speakers here present. These are people of, they are experts in their fields, and you can be sure that this topic will be, exhaustively dealt with. I'd like to recognize, in no particular order, I'd like to recognize the presence of Mr. Yomi Olugbenro. Mr. Yomi Olugbenro is the West African tax leader for Deloitte. Mr. Yomi Olugbenro, thank you for being part of us today.
Good morning. Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much, sir. I also like to recognize the presence of Mrs. Oluchi Johnson Achibiri. Mrs. Oluchi Johnson Achibiri is the head digital product for Faith Foundation. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being part of us.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I also like to recognize the presence of Dr. Peter Bamkoli. I don't know if Dr. Peter is with us today. I'm sure he will join us later on in the course of the event. Dr. Peter Bamkoli is the Director, Enterprise Development Center. So our distinguished guests, our listeners and participants online, please, I would like to crave your indulgence to please listen attentively so that by the time we get into the question and answer session, you'd have informed questions to ask our speakers. At this point in time, I would like to call on the president of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, who is ably represented by the DG, Dr. Chinyere Almona, for the president's remark. Thank you very much, ma'am. You have the floor, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. The chairman of the SME group and everybody connected this morning. I bring greetings from the president. He's on avoidable absence. As of yesterday, he actually thought he would be able to make it, but this morning something came up. So please receive his apologies. I'll give the opening remarks by the president of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Ashiwaju Dr. Michael Olawale Cole, CON, on ensuring SME growth in a challenging economy at the LCCI SME Group annual webinar holding today. Mr. Benjamin, Adegako, FCA. that I pronounced that wrong. Mr. Benjamin Adekago, FCA. I knew something was wrong. FCA Chairman, LCCI SME Group. Mrs. Oluchi Achibiri Johnson, Head Digital Products Faith Foundation. Mr. Yomi Olubenro, FCA West Africa Tax Leader, Deloitte. Dr. Peter Bamkole, Director, Enterprise Development Center. Ladies and gentlemen, the most recent conversations around the role, challenges, and growth opportunities for micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises underscore the importance of SMEs as the engine of growth for any economy the world over. This importance led the UN General Assembly to designate 27th June as Micro, Small, and Medium-Sized Enterprises Day to raise awareness of the tremendous contributions of SMEs to the achievement of economic growth and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. According to the UN statistics, MSMEs account for 90% of businesses, 60 to 70% of employment, and 50% of GDP worldwide. Small businesses are more than ever in need of support as they navigate the impact of the COVID pandemic, insecurity, supply chain disruptions, and the climate crisis. They are the hardest hit by these multiple shocks and at the same time play a critical role in building back stronger. I am delighted in leading the conversation on this same very important segment of the economy at this event today. Beyond the events on this topic, the UN opined in recent reports that MSMEs have to become more resilient to future shocks, and efforts and stimulus packages must target those who are most heavily affected by disruptions to global supply chains, rising inflation, and the continuing ramifications of the COVID-19 pandemic. Nigerian policymakers must move beyond recovery and consider ways in which to lower and eliminate barriers faced by MSMEs. They need to improve the business environment and access to special intervention finance, markets, and technology in these fragile times. Today's topic, ensuring SMEs growth in a challenging economy, cannot be more apt as MSMEs in Nigeria are being battered by a myriad of harsh economic realities. In recent times, the Nigerian economy has suffered several shocks as a result of rising double-digit inflation rates, tepid growth, higher unemployment, and even higher underemployment due to constrained productive activities. This is apart from the difficulty in accessing credit as well as prohibitive interest rates, poor power supply in the face of high cost of diesel, multiple taxation, and the general harsh economic conditions. We still believe that these challenges can be fixed with the right mix of fiscal and monetary policies that promote targeted financing for SME sector and intervention funding for manufacturers. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry is also very interested in supporting SMEs in accessing funding opportunities by interfacing with local and international development finance institutions on behalf of our members. We have had series of discussions with institutions like the Bank of Industry, the Central Bank of Nigeria, Development Bank of Nigeria, Nigeria Export-Import Bank, and the U.S. Development Finance Corporation, all in a bid to ensure our members harness available opportunities. Funding gaps for SMEs continue to widen as most commercial lenders are always reluctant to extend credit to SMEs at reasonable rates due to the high level of risk involved in financing small businesses. We reiterate our point that SMEs need special intervention funds targeted at supporting production, export capabilities, and building resilient supply chains. Government also needs to invest more in export infrastructure to ease the export of goods from Nigeria to the rest of Africa under the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, AfCFTA. We commend the signing into law of Nigerian Startup Act 2022, which is expected to empower the tech startup, most of which are in the SME sector. We look forward to more jobs and products created in the technology space in Nigeria. We urge SMEs to explore the possibilities of modern business technology to boost their productivity, enhance their service delivery, and build more agile business models that can survive future disruptions. Agencies of government saddled with the task of empowering small businesses should continue to engage with the organized private sector in the formulation of policies for the SME sector. Today, as we deliberate on issues around MSMEs' growth in a challenging economy, we can trust the expertise of our distinguished special guests to profile solutions and recommendations that can help assuage the harsh conditions faced by MSMEs in Nigeria. I wish you all fruitful and impactful deliberations. Thank you very much for your time and God bless. Asiwaju Michael Olawale Cole, CON, President, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Thank you very much, ma'am. As the DG of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dr. Chinere Almona, thank you very much for that very insightful delivery of the president's remark. Going forward, we would like to call on the chairman of the SME group, Mr. Benjamin Adekagun FCA, for his remarks. So you have the floor.
The President of Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Asiwaju Dr. Michael Olawale Cole, CON, ably represented by my Director General, Dr. Mrs. Chinere Almona FCA, members of the council here present, the sectorial group chairman, our guest speakers, members of the medium and the senior SME group, and members of the audience. It is indeed my pleasure to welcome you all to our webinar of today, titled Ensuring SME Growth in a Challenging Economy. It is a known fact that the SMEs account for the highest number of businesses worldwide and are essential contributors to employment generation and global economic development. Worldwide, they make up 90% of businesses and account for more than 50% of employment. In emerging economies, they account for 40% of GDP and are expected to create at least 90% of new jobs by 2030. In Nigeria, the SMEs contribute 48% of the national GDP, account for 96% of businesses, and 84% of unemployment. Despite the significant contributions of SME to the Nigerian economy, challenges still exist that hinder the growth and development of the sector. At Lagos Chamber of Commerce SME Group, we've taken a series of steps and we have equally keyed in to the steps taken by the chamber itself. For all our members, we put up business clinic, which has assisted us in no small measure to ensure that some of the challenges our members have been facing, trying to access funds, have been addressed. In view of the challenges of the economy, there is nothing we can say other than to look at this issue of this question. How do we as SMEs grow in a challenging economy? To address this heart-troubling question, are seasoned and experienced professionals who have been carefully chosen. Another in particular, Dr. Peter Bankole, the Director of Enterprise Development Center, Pan-African University, Mrs. Olushi Johnson, Head of Digital Products, Fit Foundation, and Mr. Yomi, FCA, the West Africa Tax Leader, Deloitte. I strongly believe that at the end of the paper presentation, at the end of the webinar, we go home knowing that we have fulfilled and that we have achieved our main aim. Without wasting your time and our time, I want us to go straight into the discussion of today. Once again, you are welcome and God bless all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sir Chairman, Mr. Dekagun FCA, for that remark. As he has said, we shall be going straight into the discussion of the day. And at this point in time, I'd like to recognize the presence of our first speaker for today is Dr. Peter Bankole, Director, Enterprise Development Center, Pan-African University. Dr. Peter will be talking on capacity building for SME growth in a challenging economy. Dr. Peter, are you with us? Dr. Peter. Okay, you have the floor, Dr. Peter. Hello, Dr. Peter. Okay, I need to unmute Dr. Peter. Just a minute, please.
Okay. I've just done that. Yes.
All right. Beautiful.
First of all, thank you very much for this invitation. I know we struggled with the timing, but I want to truly appreciate you for accommodating me as I'm currently in another program which I'm teaching all day. But I want to seize the opportunity to thank the President and the Director General, and indeed the sectorial chairman for SME at LCCI. The topic before us today is on capacity building for SMEs in challenging times or economy. There is nothing really new because our times, our economy in the last several years have always been challenging. And so it is important for us to know that it is only for the small businesses that are not prepared that they are caught unawares. I have been in this space for at least 20 years. And what I'm going to summarize in this short presentation is the experiences and indeed the survey which we carried out around the pandemic period. During the pandemic, a lot of businesses, especially small businesses, had several issues, and majority of them either closed down, reduced staff, and they were not making money. When we did a survey, more than 93% of them had all these issues that I have mentioned. Staff were placed on half salary for like 6 months upward. But there was this 7% that said that the pandemic did not affect them, and that the pandemic, they actually thrive during the pandemic. And that baffled us, that whilst everybody was complaining, how come 7% of those that we surveyed, which was national, by the way, said that they were thriving. So we dug deeper. And there were three things that came out very, very strongly. And of course, in the presentation made by the DG on behalf of the president, one stood very clearly out for me. In fact, she mentioned one or two of them already. The first one is around digital enablement. That any business that is not tech-enabled cannot grow in our time. It's a classic truth. And during pandemic, when most people were staying at home, how did they request for goods and services? It was purely digital. Whether you send SMS, whether you requested through the web, whatever it was, if you did not have digitally enabled process or processes from how you source your raw material up until your after sales services, then you are out of the game. And majority of the people that thrived during that period were all digitally enabled. In fact, two of them that were based in Lagos said they had to keep employing and hiring people during the pandemic. Of course, you can guess the kind of business that they were running. They were building that was the only way people could survive at that time. So this guy was doing like 5-6 times his usual turnover. That was incredible. The second one that we saw, because there were three things basically. The second one was the issue of collaboration. Collaboration. When pandemic struck, people had to collaborate in many ways. There were things that were your core areas, and you had to stick with your core area. And then there were some things that others could do on your behalf, then they went ahead to do it. You recall that that was the moment that logistics sprung up very well. And a lot of businesses had to collaborate with logistics companies. Today, we have been able to fully accept that many things we do, we have to do it in a more efficient way, and that's the only way that things can happen. And people have exploited it in a very creative way now, even post-pandemic. We're doing some events, and virtually all the, not just the cards, but the Ashwebi, the this, the that, all of them were delivered using those logistics companies. It's incredible how Nigerians have taken it to a different level. You will even recall that during the pandemic, people that celebrated their birthdays and everything, yes, they use Zoom, but before they start those birthday celebrations, they will have delivered menu to all the various homes before they connect. In fact, there were a few that I managed to join in. They even delivered the t-shirts that we wore during that event. So people understood very clearly that you needed to collaborate. And we've taken it to different levels. So if your core is to be able to deliver, let's say, curriculum content, you focus on that and look for somebody that is a tech person that can manage how that is being hosted and then served to the learners. So there are many ways. So it helps us to specialize in a very nice way so that we can also give depth to whatever we are presenting. The third one is the reinventing of your business model. And this one, again, I believe is something that a few of the businesses have started doing. And I'm very impressed with the way in which people have started thinking not just about reinventing the business model, but extending it in such a way that the business can also profit from it. During the pandemic, we saw restaurants pull their business model upside down and turn into kitchen focused. And they knew that at the heart of their business was the kitchen and not just the restaurant. And once they did that, it was obvious that once they can do the cooking, then they just latch with the delivery people and immediately they can send that to them. So that worked very well. But post-pandemic, there are many other things that we are seeing. Some of the students that we have taken here, they started on when we introduced circularity. They understood very well that the wastages that they used to have is also a source of input to creating other businesses. And it's amazing how last week, when we were having a retreat with some of these people, how they shared that they used to pay. There was one lady, she said on a monthly basis, she was paying like 250,000 either to get the waste done somewhere, to do this, to do that. But now she's creatively used those waste materials to create other useful products. And yesterday, as I was using one of them, my wife was telling me, wow, where did you get this lovely stuff? I said, you won't believe it. This is actually coming from waste. So changing your business model, introducing circularity, and all of those things help us to optimize what ordinarily we will be wasting. It's also very interesting that in the presentation by the DG, she talked about energy, the cost of diesel and all of those things. Interestingly, those that have suffered most happens to be small businesses. So you need to begin to think about how you use energy resources. Here at EDC, a third, maybe going to 40% of our energy consumption is based on solar. I'm aware that some businesses may not be able to go that high, especially when they are manufacturing. But a significant number of us, especially those in the services sector, should begin to think of this. Otherwise, your operational expenses will be very high and the bottom line will thin out. In addition to that, you know what is happening in the foreign exchange market. If you are today Forex enabled, or you depend on Forex to be able to make your company work, you need to begin to rethink. You can rethink in two ways. It's either you say to yourself, how can I localize what I am doing? It's very interesting that when we think deep, we will always find a solution. Again, in the last retreat that I did for some entrepreneurs, and one of them was telling me she wanted to have a party for her kid, and she wanted to import some kind of play stuff that they were going to use during the party. And then it was tough, they didn't get dollars, blah, blah, blah. And she decided to create the same activity experience using waste cardboards and paper materials. And it was a bang. Immediately after that, she now started to do this as a business. So necessity, sometimes they say, is the mother of invention. So you need to think inwardly, think creatively, and say, what can I do locally? Because it's going to get even tougher. But if for one reason or the other, you are not able to do that, the second option is an option that is a good window. Start thinking of what to export. Now, as much as possible, do not export primary products. As much as possible. Add value, then you can do the export. There are many, don't even go to UK, Europe, and all the rest. Start within the African continent. There's the Continental Free Trade Agreement. Let's start with that. Let's optimize it. Let's use them. Small businesses, you can begin to connect with small businesses across the continent. That is the only way in which we can begin to survive. Otherwise, it's going to be tough going forward, but those that know will know, and that's how they are going to grow across. Now, on the final point from me, the way in which we used to grow before is not the way we are going to grow now. We're going to grow through collaboration. So I am here in Nigeria. I want to expand to Ghana. I want to expand to Kenya. I need people on ground that understand the terrain in those countries, that understand the regulation in those countries. And then we begin to work together. When we work together, they provide me access to those countries, and I also provide them access to my country. And then there may be some products that I have comparative advantage here. I move those ones across to those countries, and vice versa. That way, it becomes a win-win situation, and we all grow together. If SMEs must grow, they must build their capacity, they must build structures, but they must also be willing to change their mindset concerning their business model. I thank you, and I hope this opens this up for further discussion. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Very well said. There's something Doctor said that caught my attention, which is reliance on Forex. I mean, if businesses, at this point in time, businesses should start thinking how not to rely on Forex. I mean, we all know what the dollar is talking now. You know, you very well said, sir. And this speaks to the topic that one of the speakers will be talking about. That's Mr. Yomi Olugbenro. He will be so much dwelling on that aspect. That's managing inflation in a challenging economy. Thank you very much, Doctor. We hope that you would still stay with us to take some of the questions that are coming. Otherwise, we would appreciate that you still spend a little time with us. At this point in time, I would like to call on Mrs. Oluchi Johnson Achibiri. Ms. Achibiri will be talking on the deployment of technology for SME growth in a challenging economy. Yeah, Ms. Oluchi, you have the floor now.
All right. Thank you very much, Eze, for that. So yes, like you mentioned, I'll be talking about deployment of technology for SME growth in a challenging economy. So I'd just like us to think, when we think technology, the first thing that should come to mind is life made easy, simplified, and quicker. So I'll start by saying that any technology that doesn't simplify your processes, you have no business adopting it. Technology should be, or the technology that you need personally as an SME should be user-friendly, and it should ultimately lead to the growth of your business. So it shouldn't be very convoluted in the part where it's very technical and you can't even use it. I mean, a lot has been said about the pandemic, and we all acknowledge that it further emphasized the importance of businesses to become more flexible and agile, and deploy everyday technology to help them optimize various aspects of their operations for value creation, efficient processes, team building, training, collaboration, safety, and ultimately superior returns. I'll take you back again. You are in business to make profit. So whatever technology you're planning to deploy should ultimately help you grow your business and make profit. And we know that SMEs, they have limited resources largely. So it's important that if you want to deploy, you deploy technology that would help you maximize these limited resources. By this, I mean, first, you should think, why? Why do I need technology? There has to be a compelling why. It's not a one size fits all. I mean, yes, we are saying that to progress, you need technology. But for you, you have to personalize it and say, why do I need technology? It's on the basis of that you will now determine the type of technology to adopt. So when you say a why, it can be something like, okay, now that we have the post-pandemic, most people work remotely or have this hybrid arrangement. So if you have a team that will be working largely remotely, then you would think, okay, so what do I need to adopt? We may need to adopt a collaboration software, to a video conferencing software like Zoom, the one that we're using now. Then when you're thinking, what technology do you need to adopt? You're thinking things like, is it going to be a long-term short term, like I mentioned, it's not a one size fits all. So what are you thinking? Internet of Things, cloud computing. Okay, now that people will be working remotely, we need to have database in the cloud where we can, have all that we collate somewhere that it's secure. We're thinking cashless economy. Are you into trading? Do I need to get a POS machine? What exactly do I need? And then we're even in the era of QR codes. Do I need to make it easier and have just that QR code somewhere that people can, scan, and it takes them directly to either my account or where they can make payments. So when you are thinking that, now the next thing would now be, so you've thought of the why, the what to deploy, it's the how. This is where you discuss hardware before software, because it's not enough to go deploy one very, very sophisticated technology and then maybe half your team. So when we talk SMEs, maybe you're talking people, you have maybe 10 people on your team, 5 people, even if it's 3, and they don't have access to a laptop that is internet enabled, or maybe they don't even have smartphones. Now we're talking 5G, but we're still on 4G. Some people may not have that. So you will think, okay, do we need to get laptops for our team? Then do you have a high-speed broadband internet? I mean, that's very key. Even in this meeting, we had situations where either people are having network issues. So what would work effectively in the area where your business is located? I don't want to mention names. You will think of what particular network works effectively in this area. And then when you've thought of that, you're not thinking of what are the low-hanging fruits. Okay, we need to have, almost everybody has a social media account. What are the ones that are free? Of all these, there are so many apps out there, tools that we can use to simplify our processes. Which ones are free? Which ones do we need to try out? What's the cost of, okay, if we're getting a Zoom, do we need to get a Zoom license? What would that cost? And you now juxtapose that against your revenue. I'll still say it again, because you are in business to make money. So it's not enough to get this very expensive, sophisticated technology, but then it is not contributing to the downline and how you make profit. Then you now think, okay, now that we are online, we are exposed. What are the cybersecurity measures that we need to take? We need to put in place to ensure that we protect whether it's data that we're getting from customers or even our internal processes. And after all of this is done, there is now a bigger issue, because for deployment is, are my team members ready for this change? Because sometimes you have this, if you have access to, some of them get grants and funds to deploy technology, have their processes, and you work with the tech team and then you deploy this thing, but the team members are not ready. It's called digital transformation, transformation being the operative word, ensuring that you carry your team members along. There's something we say that when it comes to deployment of technology, it shouldn't be a tech conversation alone. Everybody who is going to be using that, be it Zoom, be it whatever tool that is, should be carried along, because it would not be the tech team that will be using it every day. So you have to ensure, and then that they are ready. Because, okay, I would mention, there was this, we all know Microsoft Teams, and beyond it being a collaborative tool, it also does a lot of other functions, just help you, manage to like a project management tool. But the truth is that I would say this is a personal experience. Even though we deployed it, we can't use it because people would always go back to good old WhatsApp. So you don't have that tech, it's somewhere there, but the team is not willing to make that change, to use it for whatever purpose it is. So you have to ensure that your team, there's like a change management process where they are transformed mentally and they follow you along as you're deploying whatever tool, app, or technology that you need to deploy. And yeah, but I'll just list some of the benefits of technology. I know that we've talked about it. When technology is done well, it should be able to help you reduce transaction costs. it takes me back to the first thing I said, which is that any technology that does not come to make your life better, you have no business adopting it. So you should make it better, quicker, and just gives you access to information that you did not have before. And then technology will also come to help you integrate with global markets. So it widens your access to, access to markets. Like you're online, and then maybe somebody in India can see whatever product that you're selling, and they order for it, and they're able to get it. That's what technology does. And then it also gives you access. I mean, if you're online, you always see when there's one call for some organization is giving a grant or giving, some funding out there. You are aware of what is happening in the space. And ultimately, if you use technology well, you should be able to, I mean, we're getting more technical now, be able to use the data that you have gathered using technology to make informed decisions. So in a nutshell, I would say that digitalization is an important driver of productivity growth. But I'll reiterate once again some of the limitations that are there so that you are aware when you're thinking of your why, your what, and the how to deploy. So I had mentioned, limited availability of and access to financial resources, which is depending on the level you're in. So you start small and then you grow big. Then lack of skilled workforce. So it's not enough to deploy technology that only the tech team knows how to use. So if your team cannot even use that tech, we all have smartphones we probably know about 30% of what that phone does. The other 70% we don't know. So there's that gap. We need to be very, very intentional around training your team to use whatever technology you choose to deploy. And then there's accessibility, and then which I've mentioned, your team, there's hardware, you talk hardware before you talk software. So they should have access to whether it's laptop, phones that they can use for whatever technology that you have deployed. Then connectivity. We cannot forget that you need internet for all of these things to work. And so you would require a high-speed broadband, or find out which network works effectively where you are, and then something that is affordable, and ultimately ensure that you carry your team along. Thank you very much. I'll stop here for now. Thank you, Eze.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am, for that very insightful presentation. Some of the participants were asking if we could get your presentation, but I fear that you are just speaking all of this offhand.
There's no presentation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's to show that you've got a very wide skin in the game. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Please, would also like you to still hang on for question and answer session. At this point in time, I would like to go to the next speaker, which is Mr. Yomi Olugbenro, FCA, FCS, and FCTI. Mr. Olugbenro is West Africa tax leader, Deloitte, and he's going to be talking on the deployment, managing inflation in a challenging economy. In fact, as I scroll through the chat box, one of the comments that came to me was that this event is coming at the right time, where there is a huge deficit in the area of job creation, excessive inflation, and abnormal unemployment rate. And I can assure you, who has typed that on the platform actually knows what the economy is talking about. And this speaks to what our guest speaker will be talking about, Mr. Olugbenro. So please, our guest speakers, and as well as our participants, I would like you to please utilize the Q&A box to type in your questions. Thank you very much. Mr. Olugbenro, you have the floor.
Thank you so very much. It's a good morning, and very good morning to the president and all the council member, chairman of the SME group, and indeed everyone on the call, including all the distinguished speakers who have spoken earlier on. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this session. Like Eze did mention, I will be providing an overview of, how as an SME, we can combat, the impact of inflation and a lot of the macroeconomic challenges, that is facing businesses. So I'm hoping I will still have the 30 minutes as mentioned. If not, please let me know so I know how to ration my session. So there are about 5 areas that I will just touch on just pretty quickly. Just by way of context, I would like to look at what is happening around the world and within our region and sub-region, and then try to zero in down on Nigeria, just as a way of understanding the broad context of the focus this morning. And then I will try to spend a little more time on the 4th block, which is around now looking at SME, particularly what are the challenges and what are the key action points that SMEs could deploy. And then we'll look at some recommendations and outlook. All right, so in terms of what's happening around the world, I mean, just like any economy, Nigeria isn't, existing in isolation. And so what's happening in Nigeria, a significant part of that is triggered by what is happening, around the world. And sometimes the way each country feel the global pressure, it's, sometimes the level of the fiscal headroom it has, the choices each country is making, and how each country is trying to manage all of this pressure. We have global price pressure around the world because of all that is happening. The Russian-Ukraine war is affecting every part of the world. There's disruption to the supply chain globally, and so you see all of these impacts, affecting businesses in Nigeria. And when businesses are challenged, the SMEs even bear the bigger brunt. Because of all that is happening, we see monetary authorities around the world, our equivalent of CBN around the world, coming up with contractionary monetary policy, meaning that they are raising rates, they are mopping up liquidity because of all that is happening. You have inflation virtually in every part of the world. The US dollar is strengthening against all of the major currencies, including the British pounds. And so the same kind of pressure we're feeling in Nigeria. If you ask our next door neighbor, they'll tell you that even the pressure, is even stronger. And all of these are, happening at different scale, at different size. The economic growth globally is slowing down. The IMF and other bodies are projecting a slowdown in rate because of all of this. Why all of that is going on, we're still battling with different degrees of uncertainties when it comes to the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. So all of these are happening around the world, and it is affecting how each country is faring. If you look at the IMF report, very recently, they've had to project a slowing down of growth rate across the world. The global GDP is now being projected to move from the original 3.6 that they earlier projected to 2.7 because of all that is happening. Sub-Saharan Africa, the overall growth will reduce to about 3.7. Ghana's is reduced almost by half, from 5.1 to 2.8. South Africa is, having the same, and so Nigeria is also, has had its growth rates projected to be slowing down. And what's driving it are the issues that I mentioned. High inflation, tightening financial condition across different countries. Nobody can tell for a fact what is going to be the direction of travel for the war in Ukraine, and the impact of this continue to affect all businesses around the world. And the same, if you narrow down to our sub-region, it's exactly the same thing. The Sub-Saharan Africa's recovery has been interrupted because of the global economic issue and some of the geopolitical shocks we're having. Coup in different part of the continent, inflation high everywhere, and what the central banks, monetary authorities, are doing. So this in a way is saying that the pressure that the country is facing is faced by different parts of the world. What is different is how the policy responses, are being channeled, to attack many of these issues head on. If you look at Nigeria's, challenges put together, I try to summarize it into three. We have the key macro issues, right? Growth is slowing down, inflation is rising. In fact, the situation you have in Nigeria is what we call a stagflation, where growth is low, slowing down of growth, but inflation is rising. And then we see a lot of knee-jerk reaction from a monetary policy perspective, trying to arrest situation, curtail inflation, mop up liquidity by different intervention, including the more recent pronouncement, which is about the redesign of the naira, and by so doing mop up part of the overall driver is to be able to mop up some excess liquidity, among many other things. We still have huge volatility in the exchange rate, as we all know. The arbitrage opportunity between the parallel markets and the official exchange rate is only widening. Over the weekend, people are already talking about exchange rate naira to the dollar being north of 800, within that range, and so the gap between the official and parallel is widening, creating significant arbitrage opportunity and a lot of moves in between. From a fiscal side, one of the biggest issues that the country is facing is that of shortage of revenue. Okay, we are earning significantly less, if not too little, from oil, and so government is focusing on non-oil tax revenue to be able to raise as much revenue as it could make. In fact, for many times during this year, for many months, there hasn't been any amount coming from oil to FAC, and some of the allocations to the state have been largely non-oil tax revenue. And coupled with that, or as a fallout of that, the debt stock is rising significantly, and I mean, at some point, the country is spending in excess of the revenue that it earns, right, to service debt, and we've seen a good example of that also in the last budget that was just presented to the National Assembly, where the amount of deficit, that is inherent in the 20-point-something trillion spending plan, more than half of that is supposed to be coming from debt and from borrowing, because we are earning less than 10 trillion from revenue. And of course, other macroeconomic issues that is facing us that we all know, we are spending quite a lot on fuel subsidy. In the current budget that is submitted, they still plan to spend close to about 3 trillion, and that's only up to half of the year. Part of the scenario that the CBA, the Ministry of Finance has projected before was, if it's going to be a full year, we're likely going to be having over 6 trillion, all right, in subsidy. So the revenue isn't there, but we're also having to fund the subsidy. And you see the demand for wage increase is not abating. The academic staff union, just called off their strike after several months, at home. We're battling with insecurity, we're battling with insurgency, and because of that, there's significant amount of funding that is required to put all of that. So all of this, policy choices, okay, and all of this issue that is combating have the overall effect in shaping how the economy goes. The chart you have, we spend so much time on this, is just to further buttress the point that they made in terms of the criticality of the shortage of revenue and how the debt stock is rising now, well over 40 trillion in terms of the public debt, and it's coming because we haven't got the revenue to be able to do that. We're not earning enough of oil. If you look at 2011, federal government share of oil revenue was nearly $60 billion US. right? So in 2022, it's less than 3 so far. So you can look at the impact of that and how the knee-jerk reaction from monetary authority, from fiscal authorities in helping to redirect the economy. Of course, in terms of the slowing growth, I've spoken to that. You can see the growth rate versus what each of those sectors are supposed to be contributing. Agriculture at about over 23% of the total GDP is growing just at about 1.2, and these are the areas where we're even having positive growth. If you look at the oil and gas, it's nearly negative 12% growth. And so all of this movement in the economy, it's what overall is shaping the pressure that we're facing from inflation, from an exchange rate, and all of that combined. And if I can just, zero in a little on inflation, so that I can then, go to the meat of the presentation. The inflationary pressure, is continuing unabated. It's now near 21%, as at September. It's a 17-year high, right? If you look at what has happened over the past couple of years in the country, so it's at a record high in the country. And the drivers of this are largely cost push, okay, and the disruption to supply chain that I mentioned. Of course, there are also the demand side of it from an excess liquidity perspective. We've seen from the report that the ways and means, which is borrowing, or like some people would like to call it, printing of mints by the CBN to finance government expenditure, is now at 22 trillion. All right. We are in an electionary period where there's going to be a lot of spending. So there is the demand side of it, but there's also the cost, push aspects, that is coming because of the supply chain disruption, high energy costs, the exchange rate crisis. And so this is the context of where the country is. So what is the impact? All right. For everyday Nigerian, inflation causes erosion of purchasing power. All right. If you have 8,000 naira maybe a year ago, or 8 million naira a year ago, what you can purchase is practically half if you look at what has happened to the exchange rate because of the import dependence of the country, right? So there is reduction in consumer demand, so meaning that even as a business, the consumers are not able to afford the product and service, and of course the increase in cost of living. But looking at it from a business side, and maybe as an SME in particular, what all of this means is that the cost of operation is rising, your profit margin is reducing, the capacity of the business to grow and scale is curtailed. Okay, sometimes some businesses are able to pass the cost to their consumer through higher prices, but it's a chicken and the egg thing, all right? So for some product, depending on the elasticity of demand, or whether your product or your service is seen as essential or as a necessity, if you pass down the cost, it means only a little. Okay, if you look at the purchasing power, only a little can be demanded because of the purchasing power of the consumer. Conversely, it could also mean customers could look elsewhere. So overall, depending on the elasticity, you see a lot of reduction in consumption and in demand for the product. A number of businesses are laying off staff because of low demand and because of the inability of the business to also replenish stock. So every time that you have to replace your stock, you are buying at a price that is probably higher than your immediate past selling price. And so this ultimately continue to affect businesses. And of course, there is the twin devil in terms of the currency pressure, right? The existence of the multiple exchange rate is perhaps one of the biggest challenge that is facing the economy, right? And it's also a dilemma in a way, because there is the import dependence of the country. That means that if currency is devalued, right, you need a lot more naira, to be able to get your import into the country, right? But there's also the arbitrage opportunity that a very wide gap creates. All right, so with a little over 400 on the official side and nearing 800 at the parallel markets, if anyone is able to find every ways and means to be able to access official exchange rate, you will know that there is significant incentive for anyone to do so. All right, significant incentive. If you look at the impact of $1 million that is obtained at the official rate of about 412 million, whoever is able to make that can practically make double, okay, make 100% gain by putting that through the parallel market. So there's significant arbitrage opportunity. And if you look at the rates of depreciation this year alone, the parallel market has depreciated well over 30%. All right. So there's because of the arbitrage. All right. Demand is growing because of speculation. All right. Everybody wants to keep the little savings they have in dollar because of the rapid loss of value of naira, and because of the existence of the arbitrage opportunity, okay, or if you like, the artificiality of the exchange rate, foreign portfolio investors and FDIs is reducing because confidence is lost. No one wants to bring in a dollar at a point when he knows that to get that dollar back is going to be at a devalued rate, or in any event, that's if you have access to the official sources. So that's the challenges. And what's the impact? Just like inflation, okay, because we are import dependent, we are importing a significant part of our inflation because of what we are bringing in. Okay, real income is lower. Just like the example that I said, someone earning 50,000 naira a year ago is probably able to afford what half of that could afford. Consumer spending is reduced, and from a business side, similar consequences. All right, so many businesses that are import dependent have had to use a blended rate of foreign exchange. In fact, for many of the businesses, it's nearly 90-something or 100% because of the inability to attract official exchange rates. Operating cost is rising, just like inflation. Okay, inventory level is reducing because you are not able to replace as much stock as you had before because of the increase in prices. So items being imported are rising, and businesses are not able to afford their credit lines. So what are some of the policy responses that we've seen? CBN has been engaging different kind of measures to ensure that they mop up liquidity. They raise rate, CRR has been raised by 550 basis points to nearly 33%, 32.5. MPR has been raised, intervention loan rate has been raised, from 5 to 9. Forex is being rationed, and different policies by CBN to try to get more diaspora remittances of dollar hasn't, really paid off. There's Naira for Dollar scheme. There's also the scheme to raise nearly $200 billion in about 3 to 5 years. So mostly a lot of knee-jerk reactions because the drivers are varied, right? There hasn't been very noticeable improvement in what is happening. Similar measures, like I mentioned before, is happening on the fiscal side. Record high budget has been submitted, but it's only going to throw the country into huge debt. And some of the assumptions that are even contained that are driving the budget, some of them are overly optimistic. If you look at the oil production, all right, and look at what is happening in terms of oil theft, and all of that. So this is the crisis on the ground. Let me just now go to the SMEs specifically. on the call so far, we've had, several comments made as to the significant contribution of SME, to industrial businesses, to employment generation, and the significant portion of that, that is coming from SME. So we all recognize that the micro and small businesses is key engine, of development. What we haven't been able to do is to be able to channel and leverage that capacity. All right. We have the SME spread across different sectors, particularly in the trade, in the trade sector, where a lot of micro players, do exist. But in terms of the, major SME policies that I think for those of us on the call, can, begin to think about, because sometimes it's about how can the businesses survive in spite of the challenges, rather than an expectation that the challenges will fizzle away overnight. The kind of levers that the government needs to pull to be able to deal with the big challenges on the table are so many, and sometimes require significant, political power. And where we are as an economy and as a polity, sometimes many of those policies the government is not able to do immediately because of the political nature. All right. So sometimes businesses must think about what can we do in spite of the challenges, rather than an expectation that the challenges will go away. Two key things that I can mention, quickly here is the newly signed Startup Act. All right. There is a lot of support for tech startups. And we know that most of them, are essentially the SMEs. So how can businesses leverage the opportunity and the focus and the regulatory backing that, the skill, this act, is offering? There is also the opportunity that is created by the, Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, because someone had once said that the valuation of the Naira, it's only a curse when the significant portion of the business activity in the economy is import dependent. So when you are solely an importer, every time that there is a loss in Naira value, all right, you scream because you practically lose your earnings. But for export-oriented business, right, every devaluation in Naira make more Naira available for you in your business. So one of the key things that can be done is how can the business be rechanneled to take advantage of, the continental free trade zone, and be able to earn more dollars rather than, be more import dependent. So if that paradigm shifts a little, you will see a significant difference in how devaluation, how it is seen. Because if you look at the challenges that the SMEs in Nigeria are facing, all right, external volatility is very core. So how do we change that? Change that mentality where, in as much as a challenge, okay, we can turn it around to ensuring that the business also profit from it. I think it's a major wake up that businesses in Nigeria have to see how to leverage the opportunity of earning hard currencies. And if that happens, the whole business landscape or the business prospect will definitely change. One of the challenges that has also been mentioned in the course of this, while we've been on this call, is access to financing. All right, it's a major issue. There is high cost of funding, and when it's available, it is short tenured. All right, some businesses are having to, part with close to 28% when you look at the total cost of funding and all of the charges. The collateral requirement sometimes is exorbitant. Sometimes you are having to collateralize a loan by more than 100% of the facility that you are looking for. All right, there's a requirement for guarantees. And a number of statistics have shown that even for businesses that are women-led, they haven't been as favored, as some of the other businesses. So these are some of the challenges that businesses are facing. So if access to credit, is improved, and borrowing is in naira, in an environment where you are able to do a lot more, augment with export earnings, the business landscape or the business prospect can totally have a different a different view. Some of the other things that I think from an SME perspective are also challenges, but also requiring a different way of thinking, because there is the macro issue, right? There's what is happening in the economy, some of which are largely outside the control of the business, but there are also structural issues that are inherent within each of the business, and I've tried to call out maybe about 3 of them. The first one is the informality that is prevalent within the SME. Some businesses not registered, some businesses not run like like a proper business, mix of business and personal fund and personal investment. And when the business is informal, even when there are schemes and opportunities that is rolled out by, say, the BOI or the CBN, only the formalized business will be able to leverage it. Right? So they need to ensure that even as an SME, the business is run, like a business, cannot be overemphasized, because it helps you, to be able to assess the little incentive and opportunity that is out there in the economy. The other is around knowledge, because there's many businesses in business that have very limited business knowledge. Sometimes many of the SMEs, they have technical knowledge in the products or in the service that they want to render, but there is a broader way of managing business profitably, all right, that many businesses lack. So to be able to survive in spite of the challenges, it will be necessary that the business expand its capacity to be able to run business, understand macro issues, understand what is the impact of exchange rate, what is the impact of inflation, what is the impact of government borrowing or government spending on your business. If you don't do that, if there are policies rolled out and you don't know how to key into it, it's going to be a major issue, right? The other is about documentation, okay, record keeping. Again, because most MSMEs, I mean, a lot of them are on the micro side where it is owner run, owner managed, and so the man who is running the business have the technical know-how for his product or service and pay little attention to accounting or financing or record keeping. And because there is limited capacity to engage professionals, who can help, all right, only very little or no financial management information is available. And when this information is available, somebody can help you, understand that, look, if this is the trend that the prices are going, this is how much you should charge for your product or for your service, or this is the impact of the inventory you have, and this is how to be able to put it together. So the inability to have proper documentation and engage professionals, and the limited intervention that is available from government on this side are part of the issue that is facing MSME. So in terms of recommendation on how to deal with it, it is essentially just flipping over those challenges that I had mentioned, and maybe 3 key blocks of recommendation here will be: 1, capacity, right? MSMEs need to build capacity, capacity in understanding business, capacity, in understanding entrepreneurship, from a business perspective, financial literacy, all right, entrepreneurial education, like the kind of session we are on. So businesses need to scale and make sure that they understand the broader, economic dimensions of the business that they are running, right? The other is around financing. Okay, so how can the business, access funding? And we know that this is not a problem that is peculiar to MSMEs. It's one of our, one of the biggest challenges. Inability of businesses to be able to access funds, and sometimes because businesses are also competing with government, there is a crowding out effect. If government is going to borrow a significant part of its 10 point something trillion deficit from the local market, that's practically mopping up the liquidity that's available and crowding out. So there has got to be a specific policy, that will be aimed at ensuring, access to credit and access to funding by MSME. And that's where, structure like that of LCCI and structure like that of the SME group comes in, so that it can be a lobbying group, engaging with BOIs, engaging with CBN, engaging with the monetary policy authorities, and ensuring that, members are helped to have the structure and the platform to be able to access them. And that's what talks to, the structure. So businesses need to be structured so that the little that is available, you don't get caught away from them because you are not running a formal business and you don't have the structure to be able to do that.
Yeah, Mr. Yomi, I'm sorry, Mr. Yomi, let's begin to round up, please, so that we can create room for the question and answer session.
Absolutely. I'm targeting that, just the slide and the next, and then I will wrap it up in 3 minutes. So in terms of what to expect, I think the things that we have discussed are not going away anytime soon. And a number of major policy decisions that's facing government, particularly on the subsidy side, and what it does with the exchange rate policy. We will see the currency pressure persisting until we see what is going to happen to that. The trend for inflation is rising, debt is rising, and that's just going to be the trend. This is my slide. Essentially, is to say, look, just like I mentioned in the course of the conversation, if you look at the map and the chart, either in terms of the food inflation or the headline inflation or the exchange rate, unless anything major is done, in terms of changing focus from an exchange rate policy, the trend and the lines of the graph are only tending upward, at least in the medium, in the medium to short term. So what MSMEs will need to gear up is to see this prevailing macroeconomic situation as what's going to be the base over the medium to short term, and begin to channel its resources and plan its business, decisions on the understanding that we are operating within an environment that is faced with these broader macroeconomic challenges. So I would just pause there. I hope I've tried to run it through about 25 minutes of my time, and we can take questions thereafter. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Yomi. That was a very robust and insightful presentation. And I am sure our participants will also agree with me that we have a lot of questions for you. Please, we would like you to hang on. I would like at this point in time to introduce the moderator, which is the moderator of the Q&A session. I'll be calling on Mr. Igor Iroenru. Mr. Igor Iroenru is the MD, Rohi Consulting Services. He's going to be superintending this event, this session right now. So, Mr. Igor, are you online?
Yeah, how are you?
Very well. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Eze, our secretary. Thank you, my brother Yomi, meeting here again. And I want to thank every one of us for such a wonderful time. And I want to also be very, very specific with regards to some of the things that I said. We have so many questions here, but let me just quickly emphasize just one thing that Yomi mentioned. It talks about building capacity. So we SMEs, we must never forget that we should always build capacity. Two things that can help us to remain afloat is as we continue to build capacity and we keep adding value more than expected, we can remain afloat. Capacity means also documentation and the rest. So without much ado, there are a lot of comments here, but let me first look at the questions. And if there are other questions as they come in, we will take them. But the first question that I want that is here, that has been here for a while, came from Hamid Owolabi. He said, how can LCCI assist a member in the application for BOI loan. I think that should be a question that should be looked at beyond just this class. Or will Eze be able to take that one up for us?
Okay, yes, I replied to the question that we'll have a conversation after that. I also sent my number to the individual who sent the question.
Okay, so the next is to EDC, the same Amid Owolabi. So what capacity building program are available for SMEs at EDC? I hope Dr. Bankole is still around. Can you quickly talk to that? And while we're doing that, then I think this is a comment from Abimbola Oluokun. Screening exercises for SMEs should be adopted. Loan approval for them must be on past performance. No blanket approval. So that is just a comment. Let me see other questions that are here. What we have here, there are comments. For example, provision of credit to SME policy to transfer credit to the government. These are all comments. Talking about access funding, there is a silent discrimination against MSMEs at the age of 50s. You can cut off from completing application forms when you get to this. Also comments. I think these are just the questions. We can take the comments later because we are actually run out of time. Any question directly for Yomi that I've not seen? All right, so I think, okay, some are coming in. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, these are all comments. Bayo Williams, thank you, Mr. Yomi. There are a number of solutions out there, such as online courses on bookkeeping. We have some on simpleexponential.com. Okay. All right. I think that is where we are at. So why doesn't the mortgage system work in Nigeria? That question just came in now. Then the next question, I think Yomi can talk to this. In the face of rising exchange rates and the fact that banks are not able to get FS for importers at official rate, how can SME survive? Yomi, can you talk to that for us?
Well, that's a serious dilemma. I think Dr. Bankole, if I remember, when he was making his presentation, also touched on it. So I think it's about the only option that's available, other than to resort to the unofficial market, which is going to be hugely exorbitant, is to then become creative to say, look, how can we substitute, import? How can we be more creative? Are there local alternatives? Are there ways to, get similar inputs, locally? Okay, is there a way that we can backwardly integrate? So some of the moves can be from short to medium term. And sometimes for a number of businesses actually, rethink the overall viability of their business. So if the business is so import dependent, no local substitute, but no availability. So it's essentially saying that business needs a rethink, or a diversification in different areas. And we've seen so many of the businesses that are shutting down or getting into new things. This is exactly the kind of thing that is triggering it. So, but for me, every time that we think more deeply and that we introspect, there can always be a solution, particularly from the local markets, and that's one way of dealing with it.
Thank you so much. We should all introspect. Can you just take this last one, if you can explain it further to the whole house? How is escrow funding going to help the SMEs?
Okay, yeah. So so first of all, the challenges that is facing MSMEs from an inability to get to secure financing. A number of things, but if I mention two of what is causing it. So number one is collateralization. So there is no the kind of documentation and assets that maybe most banks will be comfortable with before parting with their fund is probably not available, and when available is probably not in the same scale or not perfected to be able to do that. The other is issue of identification or structure. We have identity problem in the country. Economies where everyone is able to access loan, credit loans, business loan, is on the back of the fact that individuals can easily be identified. The identity system works. Okay, with your name and with your last name and date of birth, you probably can't run away. You know, from the authorities, from the financial institution that provided credit. We don't have similar in Nigeria. And so because of all of this, sometimes trade groups, sometimes umbrella bodies provide an arrangement where rather than a direct disbursement to the individual businesses, there is an umbrella group that, you know, kind of help to warehouse or put that in an escrow or in a pool that is, you know, more accessible, more manageable. So groups and trade groups that are closer, you know, to the entities being financed manage it. So this way it can help the member group, you know, to be able to deal with the issue of identification or issue of structure, and also even sometimes even in terms of collateral. All right. So because there can be a bigger pool that has been backed by the guarantees of, you know, the umbrella body. So that's part of the ways that this can be modeled.
I think lastly for this, then I will suggest our able secretary Eze, most of these other suggestions should be extracted from the Q&A chat box so that we can post it for all members to benefit from. Is that okay?
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Iho. So while I was wrapping up the conversation, I saw a chat coming to maybe kind of raise a perspective that, but we have BVNs, right? Okay. And that with BVN, everyone assessing facility should be traceable. That's where we should get to, and that's ideally what it should mean. All right. And it's not only BVN that we have. There is also the national identity card system that is also going on. But the truth is that the effectiveness of it, because in spite of all of that, if you still look at the challenges that the economy is facing, it will appear to us as though these data haven't been cleaned up to a point. All right, have not been cleaned up to a point where they are reliable, easily usable. So there is BVN, but there is the individual, okay, right, whose BVN, you know, is tied to that account. How easily? If I give you a very unrelated example, we have issues relating to insecurity, for example, and we've had cases where we're told that kidnappers use, you know, GSM phone that have, you know, national identity card number and all of that to call victims or families of victims. And then the security agencies have not been able to become so efficient that with that information alone, they can trace and track where those individuals are. So there's a journey that we still need to get to before we can say that the identity system is working effectively.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, this last one by Charles Uduma, and then I will call our bite to close up. He says that, try to get, okay, it said most of the SMEs operate in the level of trading, more especially that of importing products and selling them locally. What, in your opinion, can the government do to drive a shift in this pattern and promote cottage industries that can produce locally for our market and possibly for export. And that'll be the last for today.
Well, I think beyond what government will do, I think it's what individuals will do, because we've also seen cases where some of these policy decisions are made by the government and they don't get well received because of our propensity to stick with what we already know. All right. So if you're trying to get the economy from import dependence to, promoting local cottage industry and encouraging local manufacturing, what government could do could be two of the things they've done before. For example, they will tell you that FX in part of the earlier intervention by CBN, FX is not available for certain categories of items. Now, you'll be surprised by the sheer number of criticism, that's greeted this kind of policy. And it's part of the measure that the government, was deliberately trying to do to make sure that we put the limited available FX on, product that we ideally only have reasons to be important. All right. So, and in terms of credit facility and in terms of incentives, if you also look at some of the fiscal incentive that is available, many of the fiscal incentives are available for manufacturing companies, businesses that are investing in critical sectors of the economy. That's exactly what some of the measures government is doing now. But what happens in practice is that the ease of doing business or the lack of it, forces a lot of businesses to just focus on margin type of business, buy, and sell. This is how much I bought it, and then this is how much I want to sell it, and off I go. For those that want to invest in manufacturing, they are dealing with increased energy costs. We're dealing with a lot of manpower issues, technical capability, with the attrition and with the immigration challenges. So it's not an easy thing. So I actually don't think it is so much of what more government can do, in as much as I know there's still a lot of lever government needs to pull. But one of the comments I made before I wrapped up was that we need to start thinking business from the perspective of how can we survive in spite of these challenges, rather than waiting for government to fix everything to make the business. And this is a conversation with the business group. Don't mind me. It doesn't mean that if I talk to the government, I will let them say, just throw your hands in the air. There's nothing you need to do. I'm just talking practical, that what can businesses do in spite of the challenges. So I think it's a business that needs to introspect and be able to take those challenges head on and be able to take advantage of businesses that can earn more effects, businesses that can locally produce, businesses that can convert the vast array of input material that we have in the country, make sure that we add value locally rather than the propensity to just do margin business, where it is, let's bring it in as finished product and let's just sell it and let everybody move on.
All right. So thank you so much, Yomi. Because of our time, we're going to take this discussion offline and continue on our platform. But at this time, permit me to call on our Deputy Chairperson, Mrs. Angela Bamkoli, FCA, to come forward and give us the closing remarks. Mrs. Angela Bamkoli.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. It has been very insightful, educative, interesting, informative. What can we say? Awesome. We have really done a good job. LCCI is taking it, the foremost chambers of commerce and industry in Nigeria and Africa worldwide. We have done it again. I think most of us would have taken something out from today's webinar. So today we are going to start with our guest speaker. Our guest speaker enlightened us in a lot of things. In short, when he was saying 70% of the SMEs, we are making it during the pandemic. I was like, where was I? And if you know our host speaker, you know that he is one of the mentors, the great mentor we have in Nigeria. He has mentored so many SMEs. He's still mentoring them, and he knows every SMEs. So some of us SMEs must find a way to make ourselves relevant in everything we are doing. He emphasized something while he was talking: collaboration. Please, let's try to collaborate. In everything, collaboration is the key word. Digital enablement and reinventing ourselves. Yes, the pandemic, like he said, has really disrupted our businesses. We need to reinvent. Then we now talk of our the tech guru, our Oluchi Echibiri. She enlightened us on our tech, on the technology aspect of the SMEs, the processes. And she mentioned that the process can drive our business. And if we have a process that is a technology that is not contributing to our profitability, we shouldn't adopt it, because the technology has to contribute to to profitability of the organization. So when you go through what has happened today, you know that yes, LCCI is really up to the notch. And we, the members of SME group, and every participant or no participant that are part of this webinar, must key into what have been discussed today. And I thank, okay, the last person, Olugbe Enro, thank you for the microeconomic challenges you brought to the fore to enable us. All these challenges, when we look at it, we'll be saying, how can we now succeed? Or how can we participate or bear all these challenges and still our business will grow? The challenges is not to scare us. That challenges, yes, we have our macroeconomic challenges, we have our fiscal policy challenges, we have monetary policy challenges, but let it not scare us, because those challenges will make us a better SME. And we have to, like he said, entrepreneurship capacity building. Be an entrepreneur, understand what we are doing. Something always come up anytime we are doing something on SMEs. And what is it? Documentation. Some of our SMEs don't document, no accounting report, no statutory document report, no filing of returns. I think this webinar has brought it up. We must, as much as possible, carry out our documentation if we have to grow or scale up our businesses. On this note, I'm here to thank the president of LCCI, ably represented by our DG. Thank you very much for supporting us throughout, on behalf of SME Group, for supporting us on this webinar. All our facilitators and guest speakers, Mr. Dr. Peter Bankole, the Oluchi Chibiri, and Olugbe Enro, we thank you all. We thank you very much. At Secretariat, Eze, you really did a wonderful job. Our ESCO, we are not left out. I know that our chairman is here. All our participants, thank you all for being part of this webinar. We thank you, and we ensure that you have taken one or two things out of this webinar. As you go, may you go in peace. May God be with you. Thank you all. And our moderator, I say a good thank you. I don't know if there's any media person here. Please, thank you for being part of this webinar. Thank you all. I'm Angela Bankole, FC.
So thank you so very much. Our members, like I said, we are taking this discussion down to the platform. And I will also let you know that next month, Ruhai Consulting, we are having our once in 2 months leadership and business success growth in a co-hotel. The details are also posted on the platform. Let's continue to build capacity, improve on our adding of value, and by the grace of God, we SMEs will build our economy and build our nation. So once again, have a great working week ahead. God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much all for being part of this event. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.